would you like me to hold up a sign and it's 5 minutes to Q&A, or?
Well, what's really key is that we keep the speakers on time. So I think maybe alert the speakers, they've got 15 minutes total, so maybe give them a 5 minutes and a 2 minutes. Oh my God. But we need to tell them that. So they need to watch. Well, you can tell them, and then we can tell them what she comes in. I would grab them before.
So we're on Anika, so what's the international controversial St. Cloud over there? I'm going to try mine. Okay, it doesn't really work. Right. There's suitors. They're not going to be too. You're going to cut her off. Hey, put money down. Ron's going to do your presentation for you. He's just going to check his and then we'll go back to yours and make sure. Anika, okay. And I can't remember my ID. And then there's Kara. Goes right into it. Tell the street. You can see it there too.
That's great. Okay.
Because there's a mic there for you. So okay, Ron, before you disappear. All right, do you want to look at yours? Oh, you're good? Oh, okay. So what I'm going to do, 5 minutes. All right, so it's ready to go.
afternoon, whose members will speak to us about the many ways in which the world of higher education is changing, and a variety of programs, initiatives, and innovations that have developed and will continue to develop to address the many challenges faced by students, faculty, and educational institutions. Each of our speakers will tackle the subject from their own unique and very different vantage point. Yet I think you will see that their presentations complement each other very well. I want to let you know that we are live streaming this session, so in addition to the people in the room, we have an outside audience as well. For those of you who are participating from outside, there is a text box on your computer screen for you to text any questions that you would like to pose to the panelists. You can type in those questions at any time, although we will be holding the questions till the end, until the presenters have finished their respective presentations. Before I introduce each of the panelists, though, I'm going to take a minute to challenge the group to see what it is that you know about this topic already. When you have the answer, I would ask you just to keep it to yourself, and we'll poll you later. Ready? Here's the question. Which member of the panel is not a PCCW member? Okay, smart. While you're puzzling that one out, let me introduce our panelists individually. I'm going to give you the short versions of their bios, but I do commend you to read their full bios in the packets. They're most impressive. Anika Daniels-Osaze, a PCCW member, graduated from Cornell in 1996 with a Bachelor of Arts in Linguistics and Cognitive Studies. In 1998, she received a Master of Arts degree in Higher Education Administration from NYU. Anika is the president of the Cornell Black Alumni Association and is active in many other Cornell alumni activities. Anika has over 15 years of experience in student affairs administration. Currently, she's the Assistant Director of Minority Affairs at the SUNY Downstate Medical Center. Prior to working in this position, she was the co-director of the PATH program and coordinator of the Early Medical Education program at SUNY Downstate. Anika also served in various positions with the Northeast region of the National Association of Medical Minority Educators, Inc., most recently as their regional director. Ronald G. Ehrenberg, whom we welcome warmly, is the Irving M. Ives Professor of Industrial and Labor Relations and Economics at Cornell and a Stephen H. Weiss Presidential Fellow. He is also Director of the Cornell Higher Education Research Institute. From 1995 to 1998, he served as Cornell's Vice President for Academic Programs, Planning, and Budgeting. Professor Ehrenberg has served as an elected member of the Cornell Board of Trustees as well as a member of the SUNY Board of Trustees. He received his undergraduate degree from Harper College, now SUNY Binghamton, and both his master's and Ph.D. in economics from Northwestern University. A member of the Cornell faculty for 37 years, he has authored or co-authored over 150 papers and authored or edited 26 books. Co-author of the leading textbook, Modern Labor Economics, Theory and Public Policy, his recent research has focused on higher education issues, and he has written and spoken extensively on these issues. He also has served as a consultant to faculty and administrative groups and trustees at a number of colleges and universities on issues relating to tuition and financial aid policies, faculty compensation policies, faculty retirement policies, and other budgetary and planning issues. Professor Ehrenberg has received many awards, both in recognition of his scholarship and for exemplary undergraduate teaching. Although I never had the good sense to take any of his courses while I was an ILR student, I'm proud at least to have walked the same halls with him. Carol B. Aslanian, also a PCCW member, is Senior Vice President of Aslanian Market Research, EducationDynamics. Until July 2009, she was President of Aslanian Group in New York City. The organization was established in 2000 and focused on assisting colleges and universities in the recruitment and servicing of adult students in higher education. EducationDynamics continues Aslanian's group's long history of providing enrollment management services, including community-wide market studies, institutional audits, and development of education-employer partnerships to colleges and universities interested in serving the adult student market. Carol has written extensively about and is a national authority on characteristics and learning patterns of adult students, and has made hundreds of presentations to educational institutions, state agencies, and national associations, focusing on her major area of expertise, access to higher education for place-bound and time-bound students. Carol has been recognized repeatedly for her work in continuing education and for her extensive alumni support for Cornell. Among other things, she is a Frank H.T. Rhodes Award recipient for exemplary lifetime alumni service, and the Helen Bo Vandervoort Alumni Achievement Award has also been presented to Carol. In addition to her Cornell degree, she has received a graduate degree from Harvard and was a Rhodes Scholar. Please join me in welcoming our panel, and let me turn the podium over to Anika.
Thank you. Well, I'm very pleased to be here. As the first one to go, I have the challenge of trying to get through 18 slides in 15 minutes. So I guess I'll be the first guinea pig, so I'm going to jump right into it. So the topic of my presentation is growing our own, increasing student diversity at our institutions. Now, initially when I created this presentation, my focus was trying to increase diversity in terms of underrepresented students in medicine, so focusing primarily on African American and Latino students. But when I was approached to do this presentation, I started to look at it from a gender perspective to see, well, does this program also assist in trying to increase females in the field? And as you'll see, it definitely has. So that's what I'm going to focus on today. So the purpose will be to highlight enrichment programs that help to diversify health profession schools, programs that are successful in preparing students for careers in healthcare, and programs that are easy to replicate. So I'll show you how you can do this in any field at any institution. So first I wanted to start off with, and I know it's kind of small, but some data on women in medicine. Now, if you have a chance, please go to the Association of American Medical Colleges website, the AAMC.org. It's fascinating how much data they have. There's a book that they publish every year on data and statistics that's about 130 pages. And it's segmented in race, gender, and several different categories. So it took a lot of time to try to figure out which chart I actually wanted to show. So I focused on one, and in this table it shows the enrollment for the first-time applicants, accepted students, matriculants, and graduates by gender. And you'll see, starting in 2002 in terms of applicants, for women we have 49%, and in 2011 it increased to it decreased to 47.3. So we did have a steady increase for a while until we got up until, I would say, 2008, and then we started dipping again, which I found interesting. And then when you look at how many first-time applicants total applied, we have 50.8%, and then it dropped again to 48.9. In terms of how many were accepted, in 2002 we accepted 49.1%, it dropped to 41%. Matriculants, we had 49.2, and then it dropped to 47, and total graduates, we had 44%, but that tended to increase to 48%. So at least our students are graduating, our women students are graduating, but how many are actually applying and getting into medical school? So that I thought was interesting to start off with. So what I'd like to do is talk about a program that we instituted at SUNY Downstate back in 1997, but we actually expanded it based on the funding that we were provided through the Health Careers Opportunity Program funded through the Department of Health and Human Services. The program actually starts from middle school, ages grades 6 through 8, and goes all the way into the health professions. So it's a true pipeline where what we attempt to do is educate students in STEM areas and encourage them through enrichment, starting at a very early age to try to keep them involved in the sciences. We are partnered with a nonprofit organization that's actually housed on our campus called the Ashe Institute for Urban Health. And they have helped us track students through the younger ages. So we are linked with several schools in the Brooklyn area for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. We have 145 students in the program starting at that level. And then from that branch, we move into the 9th grade bridge program, which is a Saturday academy, where we try to encourage the students to stay with us and to learn more about STEM fields, but we also try to make it more interactive where they meet health professions in the different areas, whether it's medicine, allied health, nursing, graduate study, or public health. From that program, then they move on to a summer institute where they're with us again for 3 consecutive summers. So they'll be with us for their 10th, 11th, and 12th grades in high school, and we give them pre-education. We find out what their academics will be for the fall and try to give them a preview of it for the summer. So if they're taking chemistry, for example, in 10th grade, we'll start the chemistry during the summer, and we do it in a way that's challenging and interesting and fun. So for some of the faculty that we've hired to teach during the summer, we'll have games like Jeopardy! And how we can turn chemistry into a game. Or for physics, we'll even talk about the physics of throwing water balloons, the physics of playing with cars, of toy cars. So things that'll keep them engaged and excited about what they're doing. Again, from that pipeline, we go into the Exploring Health Careers program. This is the first summer when they finish their freshman year of college. During that summer, we segmented into 6 weeks, and each week we focus on a different discipline within the health professions. So we'll segment it into medicine, graduate study, allied health, nursing, public health. And at that time, we tried to get the students to focus on the area that they'd really like to study. From there, we give them a choice of entering one of 3 tracks. And this is the final stage of our pipeline program known as the Early Medical Education Program. Within that program, you can select one of 3 tracks. Either you enter medicine, you enter allied health focusing on physician assistant program or the doctorate in physical therapy, or you can enter the Ph.D. track. So these are students who are sophomores or rising juniors in college. So we're asking them to commit to a field early so that we can help them make sure that they maintain the GPA they need, they receive all the prerequisites that they need, and whatever other assistance. And during these summers, we try to give them as much support as possible. So my focus will be on the final track, but I'll just give you some data for each one first. So with the middle school, in terms of the gender breakdown, for females, we had 39% for the last cycle for 2011. Now, it seems like a small number only because we started off with an initiative to increase our male population. So we had an all-boys school. So that's why that number seems very low, because one of the schools only had males. But this year, we are switching the schools that we're working with. It will be another co-ed school, so that number will definitely increase. Our 9th grade bridge program, we had 60% girls. The high school summer, the HCAP Summer Institute has 68%. Exploring Health Careers, which is their freshman year in college, 64%. And then the final track, we have 54% females in the program. So it shows you the distribution of where we are in terms of percentage, which is much higher than what you saw in terms of applicants to medical school. We're in the 40s. So you have to start high and hope that you can maintain that percentage. So now, the history of our program is sponsored by the Office of Minority Affairs at SUNY Downstate. Started in 1997 with a total of 10 students, and we've increased it to 20. Reason being, our medical school entry class only holds 180. So we couldn't use the entire program for pipeline, so we decided to come up with a number that the admissions office would work with. so that we can have that pipeline. And there are other pipelines as well that Downstate has a relationship with. It's funded by the Health Careers Opportunity Program, the Department of Health and Human Services. Currently, we're in our 15th cohort, and we have linkage schools that we work with, where there's a liaison on each campus that actually helps us to recruit and monitor the students' progress throughout the time that they're there. So all the schools that are listed are in the New York City area, and we also have community partners that help us with shadowing placements for students who are looking to follow physicians or other healthcare professionals, and also researchers. So this is why we have the linkage partners that we have listed here. And those partners are all based primarily in Brooklyn. So in terms of the schools that we selected, why did we select this particular population? Most of them are CUNY, they're part of the City University of New York. And we were looking for students who were disadvantaged either educationally or economically. And when we looked at the population at CUNY, we realized that 74.4% came from minority groups, and of that, 56.1% are underrepresented minorities. We had a very large non-traditional population at Downstate, and we wanted to continue that, so we have 28% 25 years or older. The incomes were $20,000 or less, 38.1%. 44% first-generation college students, 13.6% married, 14.2% supporting children, and 42.4% speak a native language other than English. So this was the population where we felt that we would probably find people who were underrepresented because they had some challenges. You know, they had families and maybe they weren't getting the support they needed to actually be able to support their education or continue the education that they wanted to. Now for the final track, known as EMI, or Early Medical Education, it's an initiative to increase the competitiveness of undergraduate students early in their college career. So what we do is we provide medical science lectures, academic support, and we use case-based learning approaches based on what we do at the Health Science Center. We provide time and stress management skills and shadowing experiences, not just with clinicians, but other healthcare professionals. The program is 6 weeks in duration. Students are not allowed to have any other activities during that time so they can focus. And we provide stipends of $1,500. So we're actually paying them to learn the field. And this is the support that we get from the federal grant. Now, they have to commit to being with us for 3 summers. The first 2 summers, they're in undergraduate school. The 3rd summer is after they've graduated, and they participate in a program called Operation Success, which is a pre-matriculation program. It's similar to what we used to have called COSTEP on Cornell's campus, or now they call the pre-freshman summer program. So that's what we have at Downstate. Okay, so I have to move faster. The requirements, they have to have 2 years of basic science, 3.2 GPA, non-science of 3.5, minimum of 60 credits, official transcripts, and an interview by our admissions committee. Now, they sign a contract with us saying if they participate in this 3-summer enrichment, they must come to Downstate Medical Center. The requirements, what's accepted, they have to maintain a 3.0 science and 3.2, graduate within 2 years, maintain contact with their pre-med advisor and not withdraw or have any incompletes, and maintain a minimum Mcat score of a total of 22. Now that's lower than the national mean, and we'll talk about that. So what do they get during the summers? You see summer 1, they have their anatomy and physiology, study skills, stress management, clinical shadowing. Junior year, they come back, they do prep courses and have mandatory meetings with us. Summer session 2, another segment of science courses, study skills, clinical assignments, and then clinical shadowing assignments. And then the 3rd summer, this is when they focus on the medical school curriculum or allied health or graduate study, whichever track they selected. So data, since its inception, we had 198 students. Out of that, 124 were females, so that's 63%. The amount that entered the College of Medicine, 81, which was a 64%, and the amount that graduated, 68% female. Now, I put an asterisk there because it was 85% of the students total that graduated, and the only reason that some didn't make it through were due to personal issues or they didn't meet the standard requirements. So that's about 10 out of the total population. The other 15 students that are not accounted in those numbers are still in the medical school. Now, I'm focusing mainly on the medical component because that's the largest component of our program. In terms of data with GPA, for each year, you'll notice that either they maintained the GPA or they increased. The GPA did not increase, and that was due to the enrichment they were receiving during our summer programs. We also incorporated a component where they would get counseling through our student counseling services for personal issues that might arise to try to help them deal with those as well. The characteristics of a successful student for our program would be someone who can master time management, understand the value of group study, because we do a lot of group projects, and those who are willing to seek help or advice. Now the MCAT, the average total MCAT score was 23.2, which is lower than the national mean of 31, but we still had a graduation rate of 85%. So we don't believe that the MCAT is actually a great predictor of how well you can do when you're in medical school. So there's a few success stories. Initially I was going to just talk about the women, but I figured, you know, success is success, so I'm going to highlight all of our successful programs throughout the decade. So in 2002, during our first group of ME students, we had a total of 3 students that completed. One was married with 2 children, one of the children born during the program. The ME student successfully completed medical school at Downstate and a pediatric residency and now practices in Georgia. And she believes her success was due to the intentional planning of our program. So you'll see, even though she started a family while in school, she had enough support to be able to complete. In 2004, the Enrichment Program enabled us to actually double the enrollment of our African American males in the medical school. 2006, one of our ME students was given the highest honor of the Alpha Omega Alpha Honor Society, finished his residency in urology, and felt that he was a single father, and felt that this program helped him succeed. Today, he actually finished his residency in urology. He has 5 children, married, and he is working towards being the chief of urology. He's on faculty track in his institution. In 2007, we accepted our first MD Ph.D. candidate who was an African American female. Downstate did not have any US-born PhD candidates for at least 10 years while I was there, and none were African American or Latino. So she was the first US-born that came out of our program and first African American female. 2009, we had 2 more AOA students. 2011, our first student to become faculty and is now in the geriatrics area at our institution. And in 2012, we had our first true pipeline student that started from the high school level and went all the way through our medical school and into our residency. So how to replicate this? You set goals, gain support from key administrators, make agreements with admissions offices, find supportive faculty and staff, build a liaison network, and find alumni who can help fundraise and extramural funding, because there were a few years that we lost funding due to federal issues with the economy. So we had to continue our commitment to these students who were in the pipeline. So we started a fundraising initiative highlighting all of those successes and alumni who have done such great things from our program. So in summary, pipeline programs are effective in encouraging and maintaining interest in STEM for girls at all levels of education. They include including advanced science courses and academic support help students improve their academic year science GPA. MCAT scores are not an accurate predictor of success in medical school, and partnerships with CUNY have proven to be an effective vehicle for developing a pool of disadvantaged students and encouraging non-traditional student enrollment at our institution. Great. So I hope I break the
Anika, thank you. That was fascinating.
Thanks.
Professor Ehrenberg?
Oh, sure.
I had a professor when I was in graduate school who fell asleep teaching. He was sitting down, and he was younger than I am now. So you will understand why I always lecture standing up. I'm going to talk about a paper called "Is the Golden Age of the Private Research University Over?" I do not have time to discuss the whole paper today, but if you go to the online webpage program, there'll be a link and you can just click it and you can read a draft of it there. I received my Ph.D. in June of 1970. At one time I was only 24, however, at the time. And I graduated in the best job market that we've known in higher education. I had job offers from 12 major research universities, and I was in heaven. And then over the next decade, with rampant inflation and high unemployment, the average salaries of faculty members at American colleges and universities fell by about 25% in real terms. So much for an economist being able to predict what the future said. But in spite of this dip in salaries in the 70s, my career has coincided with the golden age of selective private research universities. Over the last 40 years, institutions such as Cornell have been tremendously transformed. Our undergraduate admissions have become increasingly selective, and we have a concentration of top talent at our university and other selective privates like we never dreamed would be possible. The growth of federal funding has dramatically altered the amount of research and the quality of research that we can do, and permitted us to train more Ph.D. students than any of us dreamed possible, because many of them are supported by federal research funding. Many faculty members are teaching fewer classes today than they did in the past. And the salaries of faculty at private research universities have far outpaced the salaries of faculty in other parts of the higher education industry. So put simply, being a faculty member at a place like Cornell has been and really still is a tremendous great gig. Now, having said that, the external environment is changing dramatically. And we are seen as part of the need for our nation to dramatically increase the number of students, especially those from groups that are underrepresented in higher education who receive higher education. Our research and the research at the public research university counterparts are deemed essential to develop new knowledge, which is going to create new industries and lead to job creation and improve our nation's health and environment. But on the other hand, we're also seen as part of the problem because of our ever-increasing tuition levels, because of the ever-increasing student debt levels. Although I want to hasten to add that at a place like Cornell, no one graduates from Cornell with the type of debt levels that you will sometimes see discussed in the paper. And because in spite of our need-based financial aid policies and the increasing generosity of our financial aid policies, there still are relatively small numbers of students of modest means who attend our institutions. And finally, there is the perception that we don't spend enough from our endowments, especially on financial aid. So because of this, we're very, very much concerned at the private research universities that there may be further regulations put on us in the future. Now, what I want to argue today, and economists are noted for putting a dismal view on things, is that the financial model under which private research universities like Cornell operate under is breaking down. And basically, there are 4 points. The first point is that our undergraduate tuition levels have grown at rates 3 to 3.5% more than inflation for the last 30 years, but there now are economic and political forces that limit our ability to raise tuition as rapidly in the future. Secondly, at least partially because our tuitions have risen so rapidly, our financial aid budgets have increased dramatically, and at the margin, the typical private research university now gives back more than 50% of its undergraduate tuition to students in the form of grant aid. And this leaves us with very little money to actually run the university. Now, because of time constraints, these are the only 2 factors that I'm going to discuss today, but there are 2 other factors that I just want to bring your attention to and which are discussed more in the paper. The first is that the share of our ever-increasing research budgets funded out of institutional funds, out of the university's own resources, has increased, and we may now be subsidizing research out of undergraduate tuition dollars. And cutbacks in federal funding for research or in the growth path of federal funding will exacerbate this problem. And finally, our instructional expenditures, and again, this is not just Cornell, this is all private research universities, have declined relative to almost everything else we do. And while some institutions, including Cornell, have taken dramatic steps to reduce administrative costs, these actions are not a panacea, and they often shift cost onto faculty. We need to have continual efforts to reduce administrative costs. Okay, so let me talk about tuition first. Why does tuition keep increasing so much more rapidly than inflation? And whenever we increase tuition, we increase expenditures per student in the private research university. So put simply, students are paying more, but they're getting more. And these increases have been driven by a number of factors. First, we aspire to be the best we can on every dimension of our activity. And I like to use the analogy of Cookie Monster, who is the Muppet in Sesame Street. And I don't know whether it's a he or she Muppet, but Cookie Monster is a Muppet. And the Muppet has one goal in life, and that's to find as many cookies, I'll call him he, as he can, stuff them into his mouth and eat them. And so great private research universities have only one goal in life. We want to be as good as we can on every dimension of our activities. And so we are simply looking for resources, and undergraduate tuition, which is the major source of unrestricted revenue that we have, is just one of those things. Secondly, students and parents believe that where students go to college matters as much, almost as much as whether they go to college, and that places like Cornell confer unique educational and economic advantages on students. And this is a belief that is supported by many empirical studies, including some that I have done. Intellectual honesty requires me to tell you that there was only one study that contradicts it, and it's by a little-known economist named Alan Kruger, who is currently the chair of the Council of Economic Advisors. But since he was an undergrad student at ILR, I can't say anything bad about him. And so the result is that the number of applicants that we get keeps increasing every year. And this historically, because there's so many people battering down the doors to get here, the result is that there are very little market forces to hold our tuition increases down. Third, how much we spend per student influences our U.S. News and World Report rankings. And I have memories back in the 90s, before I was a Cornell trustee, attending a trustee planning meeting, and the trustees were berating the faculty and the administration for not holding down costs. And I said, excuse me, I'm going to do research after I leave here that will show that when you fall in the U.S. News and World Report rankings, bad things happen, and the U.S. News and World Report rankings depend upon expenditure per student. And in fact, I did that research. And so any university that cuts its cost, or increases its cost at a slower rate relative to its competitors is going to fall in the rankings. And that's a problem. And finally, we spend a lot on technology because technology is constantly changing, and we must continually adopt the new technologies and provide them to our students, even if these are increasing our cost, because the students need them to cope with the world of work, and we also need, again, to compete with our competitors. Okay, why does financial aid keep increasing? Well, it's actually a simple story. We lost the discipline around 1980 to keep tuition in line with family incomes. I was on faculty budget committees before some of you were born, but back in up until 1980 or so, we had an explicit policy which is keep tuition increasing at the same rate as median family income. And then with inflation and unemployment in the 80s, we raised tuition, and we started raising it by more rapid rates to the point that while back in the late 70s, our tuition was 28% or 26% of median family income. Today it's over 65% of median family income. So if you have a need In addition, we had very prolonged periods of endowment growth in the 1990s and 2000, which pushed down, since endowment spending rules typically are based upon an average of a number of years, and if the endowment is increasing, and say you're trying to spend 4% of an average of 3 years of the value, you'll only be spending maybe 3% of the current value, and so flush with money. That put pressure on the wealthiest institutions to raise their financial aid packages, and the rest of us tried to match them as best we could. Then institutions were shocked when data on the number of Pell Grant recipients that they were enrolling became publicized, and we began to get embarrassed, so that put more pressure on us to increase financial aid. And then the Senate Finance Committee investigated the wealthiest institutions. Kate Duke, who's going to talk to you tomorrow, wrote a master's thesis about endowment spending policies. And the Senate Finance Committee was threatening to require institutions to spend a larger fraction of their endowment than historically they wanted to. So whether the universities responded to the threats, or whether the universities saw that they should spend more because it was socially the right thing to do, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and Stanford eliminated all the loans from their financial aid programs, and then the rest of us tried to match them as best as we could. And then, of course, the Great Recession came, which we never predicted, and that tremendously increased our students' need because family incomes were down and housing assets were down. So there's one final thing. We're going to, currently, at a place like Cornell, this year the university predicts that over half of our students are going to receive an average of, and I should check the number, of an average of more than $34,000 in grant aid. And so it becomes increasingly difficult because whenever you raise tuition by more than incomes going up, the people who are receiving aid don't pay any more. And so it's going to be increasingly difficult as the share of students who are full paying goes down. And also it's increasingly divisive on campus because if I'm smart enough to read the Cornell Financial Report, other people are too, and as full paying students begin to realize the tremendous discounts that other students are receiving, they may not be as friendly to their alma mater in the future as all of you are. So what's the future? If you look to the future, what can universities do? And let me just note some things, and Carol's going to speak more about this in a moment. First, we need to use technology to improve educational outcomes and reduce instructional costs. And although we talk a lot about Moocs, that's only one thing. There are many other ways of doing this. Secondly, at most research universities, but probably not as much at Cornell, we're going to see a greater use of non-tenure track faculty, and as research funding declines, more pressure on tenure track faculty to teach more. And that's going to be hard on us because we're only used to things getting better. We're not used to things getting worse. Third, we're going to see more sharing of academic resources across university. You know, Ezra, when he said he would create a university where any person could study anything, created a really difficult financial model for us. And so you're going to see more things such as the collaboration which Cornell and a number of institutions have to teach foreign language across institutions. We're going to begin to at least strategically reduce the generosity of our financial aid programs, and Cornell has announced changes that will start in 2014. We're going to see increased quest for annual giving, thank you, increased efforts to commercialize our research, and we're going to see the growth of more full tuition or at least almost full tuition paying programs, and these are sort of professional master's programs or online programs. So you may feel really depressed, but let me conclude by telling you that what's going on in public higher education, which is much worse than what's going on in private higher education. We're all the suggested reading, which is the article, and there is the website, which you can find there.
Thank you, Carol. Okay. Well, Ron, that's a nice segue to what I'm going to propose as a possible solution, but speaking to a Cornell audience, that's often difficult because our standards are so high, and we have a lot of great concern about what our students are learning and how and what means, but I really want to expose you to what the world looks like in higher education, not only what's happening in Ithaca or Cambridge or Palo Alto. So I'm going to talk about some new things that are happening because of the changing nature of who's going to college. You talk about discount rates. Most of the colleges I visit are sort of middle-tier institutions, and their discount rates, like at Marist, if it's tuition at $30,000, they'll give you $15,000 to $20,000 as a gift. At Long Island University, the discount rate is probably up to 40 to 50%. That means they're not collecting the increase in tuition. They're not collecting the tuition, so they can't use it for research and faculty and other means. So it's a desperate situation. And there's one article I read recently, Ron, that said within about 25 or 30 years, half of all colleges will close. That's a little bit dramatic, but they won't be able to survive the way they're living right now. I want to give you a lay of the land. So today, in American higher education, across 4,500 different universities and colleges, we have 22 million students. Roughly 18.5 million are undergraduates and 3.5 million are graduate students. This has been a 16% increase in the past 15 years. Okay, that's a lot. That's a big increase. And the minority versus majority proportion of this makeup is going to change in the next 10 years. We're becoming far more Hispanic in the college-going population, far more African American, far more Asian Pacific, and just a squeeze, a little inch up for the Caucasian market. Not very much. In 10 years, what are we now, 2023, we will be minority students will outnumber Caucasian students in American campuses. We know that that's coming, we know the demographics, we know the high school graduation rates, etc. Here's another challenge we have in front of us. Close to 80% of Americans have some college, but no degree. You know what that means for our economic structure and our economic growth? Not a good story. All the jobs that are being created, the inroads in the future, what's coming around, we need a college-educated population. Too many people have credits, but no degree. And there's a huge national initiative now for some states to urge their colleges to bring back these older students who have some credit but no degree, because it will not be good for our economic development goals. And this is the reason why. Of course, that's not here at Cornell, and it's not Yale, Princeton, or Brown, but half of all college students finish in 4 years. Do you know some of them? The half that do not, and we've done lots of research for colleges in recent years, and we were astounded about the number of people over 25 who come back to school. Now, when I started in this profession, the average age was 35 to 40. Now we're seeing a third of that over 25 population in their late 20s. They're 25, they're 26, they're 27, 28. Want to know why? They leave at age 20 or 21 with a handful of credits. They go out to the workforce because they really didn't know why they went to college in the first place. They go out in the workforce and they find out, I can't do it. I can't make it. And when they get to be around 25, 26, 27, they said, I gotta go back and finish that degree. So my job over the last 20, 30 years has been helping colleges bring back those students. I deal with the adult population, so to speak. I don't work with students 18 who can go on to college on their own. I work with this kind of population, which makes up, actually I'll show you shortly, makes up 50% of all higher education enrollments. We wouldn't know that here on campus. But half of all that 22 million population are people that on the age of 25 and older. The reason is they didn't finish what they began. And higher education is now more accessible for those who never began. And this older population will grow at a faster rate. those 35 years plus, is growing faster than those in the 18 to 24-year-old category, and that's just a matter of demographics and birth rate. The 6 patterns impacting overall student enrollment. As Ron said, it's becoming unaffordable. And more parents and students are not willing to pay the higher costs. They're seeking alternative venues. They're looking for certificate programs, they're looking for training programs, they're looking for quicker online programs. They just can't afford to pack their bags, run off to Ithaca, stay 4 years, and graduate in 4 years. Even with the discount rates, because they're not going to everybody. Think of all the people who don't make the qualifications. Of the Ives that have the endowment to support those subsidies, they have to find other means. The consumers are demanding results. I remember when I first worked on council, I was on the career placement committee. And it kind of faded away because back then placement was very important. We had a whole service area. I don't know what's happening in it today, but you don't hear very much about career placement. But parents are very interested and want to know, what is my $250,000 or what I'm going to get my students in terms of a job? Social media is normalizing transparency. We're talking everywhere on media outlets so that students understand what they get for the value of what they're learning. And where do I go and what do I buy and what's going to get me the best? And they're talking to each other about it. Competition is intense, and it's breeding what we call commodification. Do you know how many parents bargain with schools about which one's going to give them the biggest discount, which one's going to support the room and board, and so forth? We're treating it like a commodity, more and more. Public is expressing great discontent with higher education, all the surveys show. And I'll show you shortly some decreases in high school graduation numbers that also compounds this. There's about a 7th, let me go to a 7th point that's not on here. The government fiscal crisis, you don't think that's going to affect us? It might lower Pell Grants, it might eliminate Stafford Grants. That's going to be a huge impact. Another is mounting student debt. When they hear what others end up owing when they finish school, they're going to think twice. I can't afford to do that. And finally, we need new operating styles. I'll get to that shortly. So these are high school graduation trends in the nation. We're right in that middle bar, that red bar, which means we're in a dip. We have gone down in high school graduation numbers because fewer students were born 18 years ago, 20 years ago. It's going to creep up, but it won't get to this point for another, what, 10, 20, 15 years. And guess what? The students will look different. They're not going to be like the people 20, 30 years ago. They're going to want different things. They're going to want efficiency. They're going to want lower costs. They're going to be demanding more. So what do college students look like today? Sitting on the grass, reading books, playing intramural sports, or are they in a class somewhere after work, or running off while hubby takes care of the baby for a while? Okay. Only 27% of students today are what we call traditional students. That's what we all were. We were 18 to 24, we lived on campus, and we attended full-time. That's under 30% of college students today. Most of them, we used to call them non-traditional, but there's a new phrase out. I don't know if you've got hold of it, Ron, or not. It's called post-traditionals. So that's a new way of saying. No one wants to be non, so we had to have a post-traditionals. And most of them are working, even here on our campus. Most of them live off campus, are financially independent, and are often first generation. So let me talk a little bit about technology and what it's going to do to try to solve these huge mounting problems. Disruptive or not, the whole tech. There's a professor at Harvard Business School, Professor Christensen, who has coined the term disruptive technology. Is that right, Ron? Disruptive technology. And so it's a big idea now in higher education. I thought you'd enjoy this, because it gives you a little clue of what I'm going to say. These are children ages 2 to 3 whose mothers say they can operate a computer mouse, 69%, turn a computer on and off, 63%, play a basic game, 58%, make a mobile phone call, 28%, and open a web browser, 25%. What do you think the future is going to bring? My own little grandson, 5 years old, last year, came into the kitchen, and I was looking for my iPad. I said, where's my iPad? Where's my iPad? And he looks and says, Grandma, is it a 1 or a 2? He's 5 years old. I mean, you all know this, because you have grandchildren, and you have children of your own, and you can see the differences. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about online education, because that's one of these solutions that we think is very strong. It's cost effective. Now, I know I'm speaking to a Cornell audience, and I know what you all, 5 minutes, okay, I'm going to run. It's cost effective. It's dramatically improved. We've got places like Carnegie Mellon, and we've created all kinds of new improved platforms. It's quantifiable. It is tailored so diverse populations with different needs can learn through diverse learning styles. It's individualized. It's a lower cost option. It's one way to reduce tuition. It's efficient. It's usually timely. You get out faster because you can learn 11 months a year rather than, what is it now, 7.5? Often my respondents in our survey say, why can't I go 11 months? The faster I get my degree, the faster I can get out, the faster I can get a raise and a new job. Well, I don't need 4 months off in the summer. Maybe faculty do, but I don't. Okay, anytime, anywhere. Here's some interesting things. 2 million elementary, secondary students took an online course. That was, what, 5 years ago? And that was up 47%. What do you think it is today? 4 million? What do you think these students who are doing the things the 2- and 3-year-olds are doing, and also taking online courses in high school, what do you think they might want to do in a big lecture hall with 600 people? And 200,000 K-12 students attend online schools full-time, like Stanford has an online high school. Market trends in online education. You won't believe this. But the green bar shows you that, let's just look at 2010, that was 2 years ago. 6 million of that 21 million students in American higher education took 1 or more online courses. And they did it here at Cornell too. I don't know how many online courses are offered here, but I'm sure there are enough. I'm sure a third of, and if you offer it to the undergraduates or the graduate students, they'll flock to them. That bottom blue bar states that 2.1 million took all their courses online. I'll just make it short. 10% of all college students today learn totally online. 1 out of 10. And it's not only at Strayer, DeVry, and Phoenix. It's at the University of Nebraska, it's the University of Maryland, University of Michigan, it's Duke University, you name it. What's that? Oh. Online education is critical to the long-term strategy of my institution. We polled higher education administrators, presidents, and provosts. Look at that red line. It's going sturdily up ahead. We're getting much more cooperation from higher education administrators in terms of changing the style we teach. I want to say a word about Moocs. It's maybe even you guys have heard about it. You may not be in the field of education, but we can't talk enough about it in higher education. I'm almost getting tired of it, but it's a big intervention. It's a big intervention that will lead to many other things. It's really massive, open, online courses. And what Macmillan defines it as is a high-level course of study offered via the internet in such a way that a large number of people can follow it, okay? And it's a platform. It's a very sophisticated platform to offer university-level courses across disciplines to a worldwide audience. It has the potential to transform higher education. I'll tell you about edX and I'll tell you about Coursera at Stanford. It's not initially created for revenue yet. It will be. And its materials are produced to complement classroom courses. It's to break out of the chalk and talk syndrome, the traditional lecture style courses, and it's great publicity for the Stanfords, the Harvards, and the MITs that are doing it in huge numbers. It's a consortium approach. We call it edX at Harvard and MIT. They've got dozens of institutions, including Georgetown, Berkeley, and Rice. Coursera is a for-profit entity that Stanford has put together, and they've got Duke, Emory, University of Virginia, and 29 other prestigious institutions. When is it on the next slide? Yes. Hold on, let me go back. When Berkeley put up its intellectual what was the name of the course? Intelligence. It was an intelligence course by some famous professor. They had 150,000 students worldwide. The numbers in these programs are in the millions. You say, how can that be? They looked at the Google map. We had people in India, we had people in China, we had people chatting to each other from Africa. They want to learn. Now, one of the problems are people don't stick with these classes as long, but you know, 25,000 out of 200,000 stay with it. What's wrong with that? It's a way of sharing the expertise of incredible, they only take the best faculty of all these schools, the best faculty to teach these programs. They're not for credit yet. But the American Council on Education is working with Coursera to take their courses and apply credit to them. The ACE, the American Council on Education, looks over courses, determines what credit they bear, and then will recommend to the Cornells and others, if a person comes in having taken this course, it's worth about 1 credit, 2 credit, 3 credits. So you can imagine what this can turn into as individuals start picking the best faculty from the best institutions to put together a program of learning. I'll be, okay, I think this is the last one. That's Cornell. So, bringing it back home, we got a great start with eCornell. Established 12 years ago. We already have 30 or more online certificate programs with cooperation with 6 of our colleges. And it has served 65,000 learners in 208 countries. 40% of people who participate in eCornell programs are from international settings. Amazing capacity for us to reach to people all over the world. We're in the process of creating a degree. That's very sensitive in Cornell. It's a hard nut to crack. Many of the other institutions have put degrees up, but we haven't yet. And I guess ILR is our first willing partner. We're quite reserved about it. But, you know, with a name like Cornell and a brand like Cornell and the range of topics, I say to Alan Matthews, do you know how many nutritionists there are in the world who need advanced training in nutrition, and they can't make it from Kenya, they can't make it from Odessa? So why don't we give them our best? We have the best of everything. If we could put these programs online with the latest technology, I mean, you can't teach as well sometimes as these courses are teaching. Okay, and then we have Cornell Tech, which you all know about. I don't have to go on that. And then I read, right before I left yesterday, quote, Cornell will join a Moocs consortium in March. Big news. Whether it's Coursera, edX, or one of the other 10, we don't know yet. But I think we're making steady headway. It's the right way to go. And I mean, our brand is so strong, our quality of our faculty is great, and we have every topic you can imagine. So this is a way to solve some of those earlier problems I mentioned. Thank you.
Thanks to all the panelists. This was very, very interesting and provocative discussion. We will take questions from the floor now, as well as from our outside audience. So, right here.
Hi, I wanted to ask Carol, if we are putting degrees, or any universities putting degrees online 100%, does that mean that we will diminish the people who will want to come in person, or are we going to be creating two-tier educational system, one for sort of the privileged elite who can afford to or want to come in person versus the people who have to do it online, or are we diminishing the in-person value of the degree?
So do you think classroom-based courses then are more valuable than an online course because of discussion and, right?
That's the standard question.
There are a lot of people who take all their courses online and learn a heck of a lot. There are a lot of people who sit in lecture classes with 300 people, 300 people. A lot of this is going to be for introductory courses. I didn't mention that. Because with the introductory courses, you know how large they are. What is the level of one-on-one in an introductory course? So a lot of the elite institutions are thinking of it as a cost-saving measure to teach the huge year 1, year 2 programs.
You said a degree.
Yes, okay, now we're going to say a degree. I think as Villanova is offering its master's degree in human resources online and has 800 students already, it's doing it in a quality way. Now, you're not going to get everything you get on a one-to-one basis, but, you know, everybody can't make it to Ithaca. Everybody can't make it to Philadelphia. Now, is it going to diminish our enrollments overall? I don't think so. In fact, it'll give us the income to do the kinds of things that Ron is saying we can't afford to do.
Thank you, that was really a great presentation. One of the issues with online is then determining at the end of it whether students have really learned as much and how you measure that. And I would ask if you know anything about it. A little bit I've seen suggests that online isn't as effective unless it also includes a major touch component. So
There is a thing called hybrid learning, blended learning, where some of the courses, you have to get to a campus sometime. You can do it low residence, like 1 month a year, or you can do it every other week if you're learning at NYU. And that's highly desirable, but many people can't make that. What was the question?
well, which is how you have to measure at the end
Oh,
of
you
the day.
measure. I don't know, do you know, Ron?
Well, I mean, there are lots of studies that suggest that, and the places you should look at are the National Center for Academic Transformation and the Open Learning Initiative at Carnegie Mellon University, which suggests that these methods can lead to, as Carol said, improved learning, lower dropout rates from classes, a shorter time to learn the material, and at lower cost. But not all online learning is as sophisticated as that, and there was a recent evaluation of all of the online learning programs in the state of Washington, which basically concluded that another very important factor is the nature of the student, and that mature adult students do much better on online learning type things than do disadvantaged students from non-traditional college, from groups that often would not be in college and that are recent high school graduates. So there's a lot of thinking about how this has to be done.
Hi. Thank you for all of your presentations, and I do see that the benefit of utilizing technology and the changing marketplace can make things more cost-effective and outreach to be more expansive. One of the things that I, as an alum, I take pride in is the fact that the only people with Cornell degrees are people who went to Cornell. We don't have honorary degrees. A lot of other institutions do. Maybe it's sort of, and one of the concerns that I have, and I don't know if other people share this view or not, is that if it's one thing to enhance and make things more cost efficient and have a blend. It's another thing to provide everyone in the world a Cornell institutional degree, if they're able to apply and meet certain standards and take something online. There's a benefit to being in Ithaca or on potentially the Cornell Tech campus or other locations. I don't know that it's necessarily the same. I don't know if that's come up in your studies and your research in terms of the value of the education for Ron Point.
I mean, this was a big issue when Cornell began getting into e-Cornell, and the faculty was very, very firm that they did not want any degree programs. And I think that that is still the view for our undergraduate program. But for professional programs, there's so many hybrid type programs around the country that we would just be shooting ourselves in the foot. And I think one way to look at it is, if we were located in New York and we were Columbia or NYU, we would have millions of classroom professional master's programs that would generate large amounts of money to help support the rest of the university. But there isn't a large working population that lives in Ithaca, New York that can take those classes at night. So it's a real economic necessity for those parts of the university that can offer full-paying professional schools to take advantage of online and hybrid ways of doing so.
Indeed.
How long do you think it's going to take before the online courses and a full online education is going to become fee-paying. And that the people here and basically in the broader, the Harvards, the Stanfords, the MITs, the Berkeleys, I mean, when do you see this transformation from free online courses to fee-paying online courses, fee-paying online education happening, and do you expect the level of what can the world expect in terms of the level of fees that are going to be charged, because there are so many international students taking these classes?
And that's exactly why brand matters. And that's exactly why we will have a shrinkage, I believe, of institutions. And, you know, for better or for worse, if the best can do it in larger quantities, why would you want the less good to do it in larger quantities? So in a sense, I have a feeling that MIT and Harvard and Stanford entered it this way as a testing ground. And when they see that a course can bring in 250,000 people, who are these crazy people all over the world who want to take a course not for credit on intelligence? I forget what that course was. So I think it will be soon, and it's already, Ron, it's already being done, as you were saying. I don't.
Yeah, I think you have to distinguish between these Moocs and the notion of online and hybrid learning, where class size may be no different than the class sizes that we currently have at an institution. And in many places, there are tremendous online learning. Because I visited Michigan State University, and they use online learning as a way to, and the people taking the online courses are primarily their own students, as a way of getting more students in and not having to worry about expanding capacity and space to house them. And students love it because basically they can take it at times which they want. And they can take it, they don't even have to get dressed. They can,
But I was actually talking more about these huge numbers of people, particularly internationally.
We don't, nobody knows. It's a highly uncertain world.
I can't imagine why 200,000 people would take this course. It just, and with little, if any, advertising. They found, I mean, everybody's online, so they find these things.
Anika, you know, we could talk about online education for the whole rest of the weekend, I know. But I'm curious about one thing. How many of these kids who start off in your programs stick with it? And how many of them discover that they weren't cut out to do this at all? I look at my own life as an example. I entered Cornell as a biochemistry major, and I worked in labs during, you know, to help finance my education. And I discovered that while it was fun for 10 weeks, I couldn't imagine myself doing it for 10 years. And so I didn't stay with that. I did not become a veterinarian as I had hoped originally. And I had a very productive life as a result of making that change. However, I just wonder if these kids don't feel pushed into sticking with a program that they really weren't cut out for.
Okay, that's a good question. And just so you, one thing I wasn't clear about, the people can enter at any level of the pipeline. We prefer they stayed all the way through, but some people join us at different grade levels. So they may not have felt that they were being pushed in the same amount of time to be in a certain field. But in terms of, from our data so far, and I'll focus on medicine because that's our largest and our oldest program, about 60% stick with the program. And out of the other 40%, we've even seen that some students might not stick with medicine, but choose other allied health fields. Because after, we've given them shadowing assignments, we allow them to actually go around with the physicians and see what the lifestyle is like. And some of them say, you know, I might not like this as much, but I like the nurse that I met that day, or I like the physician assistant better, and they might enter those fields. So even another percentage of those students still stay within healthcare, but not necessarily within medicine.
Okay. Okay. One more, and then Gloria, and then I think that's going to be.
No, there were none online.
And this could be for Anika or Carol. Now, one of the slides which I thought was really interesting was the fact that in 10 years, diverse students will outpace majority students. So what does that do to the education field and the way we teach? So could we talk a little bit about how that demographic change is affecting education as a whole, whether it be online or whether through your work that you notice there are different methodologies that teachers are using to deal to work with the population?
Well, at Downstate right now, we're actually going through a curriculum change, and we actually just finished an accreditation site visit this week. And one of the biggest topics is cultural competency. So every institution has to have a plan of what cultural, first of all, have a definition and know what it means. You know, it's not tolerance, it's how do you understand different cultures, how do you incorporate that into the curriculum that you're working with. So right now, they're intensely working on making sure that they have a full-fledged cultural competency and multicultural curriculum that's relevant to the medical field. So that's one thing that I see will be critical in the fact that you're having different types of students entering. You know, we're dealing with different cases that people haven't seen before. You know, dealing with how religion impacts healthcare. And, you know, we focus a lot of our efforts on trying to do workshops and team learning, team-based learning, and conferences outside the classroom where people can actually have team group learning and learn more about each other and actually share personal experiences. You know, students are learning, you know, what can and you cannot do within the Jewish community when you're treating certain patients. What can you do in the Muslim community? How, you know, just how in general you think about how you can be healed. You know, some people think of healing in a very different way. And, you know, from a physician standpoint, you're looking at it from maybe just a medical procedure, but they're thinking, you know, how can you incorporate family into their healing process? Or there are alternative ways of healing. Maybe they're doing things at home that might conflict with the medications that they're taking. How do you talk to them without offending them and saying that their culture may be impacting the process of their healing? So I think that's what's going to be the biggest issue.
Can I make a recommendation along those lines?
Yes.
There's a fabulous book, a nonfiction book called The Spirit Catches You and You Fall Down. It is by Ann Fletcher, and it addresses this exact issue that you just
Thank you.
Gloria?
In my quest to have an active retirement life, I started teaching. And I started face-to-face teaching in 2006. I started teaching online, and in 2009, I started teaching blended. And because of how technology has become so robust, it is a fabulous way to deliver information. And what I really learned is that a student cannot hide on an online course or a blended course, because the information available to the professor teaching that course is so far above the face-to-face situation and delivery that I know when they open up, I know how long they work on the assignment. They know when they get an email from me at midnight, their project was due at 11:59 p.m. It is midnight and it's not there. They get an email from me. And so...
Automatically, or you're upset?
It depends on how I feel.
She works 24/7.
But, and the other thing is that you don't have to be routine in an online course. I can surprise them with a great message, like I told you yesterday, I'm gone for 3 days, you're just not going to hear from me. I got 3 emails, what am I going to do? I said, you're going to ask the question now. So it is much more human than the high level of discussion is going. And the technology is what's making it happen, and the delivery. And what I'm excited to see is young faculty engaging it in such a creative way that they are teaching these students far above. And I'm at an undergraduate school. I can imagine even at a graduate level how exciting it can be. So I think it's not only exciting for the student who is taking the course, but the faculty who are teaching. It's an unbelievable way to deliver information. And you can change it. You can change it very, very easily. So I think there's a lot to do. How you market the brand is going to be your successful.
I think that's a perfect note on which to end our session. Would you please join me?